I assume by now that you've seen my Pan America first ride video. So in that video, I threw a leg over the Pan America. So the way Harley's doing it for the 2022 demo truck, at least for this rally, they said they're going to keep doing them as long as the lawyers will let them, is that riders should first do the guided pavement ride, about 25-30 minutes riding, and then they can come back later that day or the next day and hop on and do the guided adventure route. They said this is the first year that the Harley lawyers have let them take people off-road with these bikes, and they asked us, hey, can you guys be on your best behavior so that they'll let us keep doing this? Don't screw this out for the rest of the people the rest of the year who want to experience these bikes off-road. So with that, we were all on our best behavior, I would say. These demo off-road bikes were the Pan America Specials. So they had the Screaming Eagle exhaust, shift assist, what do they call it, quick shifter. They had the heated grips, all the ride modes for off-road, as well as the up-down rear shock as you come to a stop. We were able to put the bikes into off-road mode, and they were equipped with Michelin Anarchy Wilds, the tires that have twice tried to kill me, but hey, beggars can't be choosers. And before people comment, I am a sitter. I do just fine as a sitter. I like sitting. It's my thing. I stand if I need to. I sit every other time. It's just how I ride. What I will say, now I have about, I would say 25,000 miles of unpaved road experience on the R1200 GS Adventure, and I've got about 3 days of off-road riding on the R1250 GS Adventure, and then multiple previous BMW Boxer engines. So I'm going to give you that comparison. GS off-road rider, some gnarly stuff, but mostly just fire roads with street and knobby tires. This bike, I think, had a lot more torque at lower RPM than the Boxer. However, the torque was not tame. Now, this is in the off-road mode, which I assume is going to deliver, a less power per throttle twist. A lot of people say that the ride modes cut power. They don't. They simply modulate the amount of percentage of throttle the throttle gives. So at a full, wide open, it's 100%, but in like a rain mode, it's 50%, and in race mode, it's 150%, like that kind of a multiplier. You'll notice when we're on hills and we're to stop and we're getting started, you might have to rewind a little bit to see those clips. Everyone in front of me, including myself, were just throwing gravel everywhere to get this bike moving. It could be the weight of this thing. It could be the fact that the weight is higher up. But I think it's because it's putting a lot more torque down right off the line. And therefore, now for me, as a GS rider, I feel like that torque curve is, you get a lot down low, but you can give it as much torque as you really want. And this thing really wanted to chew up and around corners. Like when I'm here, if I put some weight on that left foot peg and put my ass out to the right and give it a little bit of power, it slides out much more easily than my GS does. With or without ride modes or ABS traction control turned on. So I think this thing, is a lot more of akin to a Super Adventure 1290R from KTM than it is to a GS. Balance was great. The handlebar height to pegs was perfect when I did stand up. Without the need of risers, I'm 6'3" with a 32-inch inseam, or 33-inch with boots. When I stand up, I'm not having to hunch to touch the handlebars, which is really nice. The pegs are incredibly thin, thinnest pegs in the business. If I bought one of these things, first thing I would do is put big fat pegs on this thing, like a Black Dog CycleWorks Adventure 2 peg, because in touring mode, when you're sitting for 1,000 miles or when you're standing for 1 mile, those pegs are way too small. So Harley, bigger pegs. These are like 2-stroke pegs. I don't know what they're thinking. The throttle is lazy. Not the response. The response is very good, but like there's a lot of play in the throttle, which was kind of weird for me. TFT screen, way too busy for off-roading. I wish there was an off-road mode that just gave me the core stuff, which is RPM and speed. That's all I want to know. RPM and speed, and maybe flash at me when the traction control turns on. But this screen is way too busy for when you're trying to quickly glance down and see, 1 or 2 stats. Just like the standard GS and GS Adventure, the windscreen is floppy as hell. Pan America ground clearance is way too low for me and my kind of riding. So as a rider who likes to go down dry creek beds and through muddy swamps and into places that big bikes shouldn't go, I've lifted my GS, so it has larger front and rear shocks, and the Pan America sits way too low when it's being ridden. For me, at least. So I would say this is probably on par with like, Super Tenere 1200, height or clearance. The sound is good. Sounds great. The engine whine sounds great. The balance of the bike, it's certainly well balanced. Front wheel is, just like the GS's. I think it's 19 inches. It's perfect for touring and fire road stuff. The fact it's a chain is really nice. I kind of like that. Would have been cool to see Harley try a shaft drive just as a proof of concept. I think the bike, the side profile of the bike and the rear, very sexy. The front is kind of ugly. But I'm just a double beak man. I like the low beak and the high beak that the GS has, and you just can't change my mind on that one. How this thing rides, you feel all of the weight. And the BMW Boxer GS is the perfect bike for almost any kind of riding. You have people winning Iron Butt rallies in those things. You have people traversing the world in those things, doing BDRs, doing really hard, gnarly stuff. You see some of the GS trophy clips. The GS, is a Swiss Army knife. The Pan America, by comparison, I would need to add a lot of wind protection, bigger windscreen, some kind of winglet, some kind of, tank saddlebags, larger handguards, in order to get the wind protection I do on my GSA. And yet I would need to also lift it to be a more competent off-road bike, not fire road bike, off-road bike. I also feel like it's a little bit long. I gotta look at the length, but compared to my GS, it feels long. So I just don't know if this is a good touring bike compared to the GS. It's certainly not as capable off-road compared to the GS. And it's definitely too heavy to be, a lane-splitting commuter bike. Steering is very agile, very direct steering, good rake on that front steering head angle. Nice that they included a steering damper. I think they got the ergonomics perfectly. I want about 100 pounds less weight, 6 or so inches shorter, wider front fuel tank, and a larger fuel tank. Range was only 200 miles, so larger front fuel tank. Give me 250 miles or else, and more wind protection. And I think we'd have a winner. maybe the Pan America Adventure comes out. So, I got my first ride thoughts, and those were kind of on-the-fly thoughts on how everything, the shifting and the steering and all that kind of stuff worked, and I gave some good immediate feedback on that. I think this is I rode this bike 3 or 4 days ago, on and off-road. Here's some thoughts. It's got promise, though, and I think, 10, 15 years from now, when they're on the 3rd or 4th generation of this, it's going to be a contender. And I hope that BMW, Triumph, KTM, Husqvarna, and Yamaha don't sit on their laurels, because this bike's coming for them. And behind the Harley brand, forget about it. Thanks for watching, everyone. Be safe.